Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is HeroQuest, and it's time to follow an honored tradition, skipped only with the rogue. Today, we are going to playtest the monk hero in HeroQuest, and to do so, we're going to be using a variety of assets across different platforms. You see before you the beautiful dungeon mat designed by Ian Schofield based on the Rise of the Dread Moon expansion. In my hands, I have 2 movement dice from the Frozen Horror expansion, and our combat dice today will be the dice that come with Prophecy of Talor and Spirit Queen's Torment, just for a little bit of added flavor. And we will be playtesting the monk solo using the trial. I realize there are other quests, but the trial is the one that I have used as a benchmark for playtesting these heroes, and this is not a playtest that is supposed to reveal some optimal build or strategy when playing the monk. This is just a casual playthrough. I will try to make good decisions as best as I can when faced with challenges throughout this quest. But as seen in other quests, at some point, this lone hero is going to fall. When and where that is exactly is anyone's guess. Now, everything else that we're using is from the base game system, and we are only using the hero collection, Path of the Wandering Monk, to supply us with the monk hero. Now, the monk is one of the more complex heroes in HeroQuest offered to us by Avalon Hill. We have 4 suits of elemental styles, and these are played a little bit differently than the abilities that other heroes have. We actually have one for each of the 4 elements, but each card is double-sided, giving us access to 2 abilities per elemental style. The elemental style of fire cannot be used until the air, water, and earth elemental styles are exhausted. Now, to make matters a little more complex or complicated, we have multiple interpretations of the different abilities on each card. We also have multiple interpretations of how to use elemental styles, despite the card providing us with supposedly clear instructions. I think in classic HeroQuest fashion, there is a bit of ambiguity on the cards. There is a little bit of a need to interpret. I think, however, as long as there are technically ambiguities on the cards, that all interpretations are valid. So if you see me playing a particular way with these cards, perhaps it's part of my play style. Perhaps I used a technique on a goblin, but I could have just as easily used it on an orc, which is the greater threat. And I welcome all sort of corrections to play style in the comments below as to that type of situation. But there are also going to be interpretations that I use of these cards that I am making on the fly. Interpretations that, rest assured, make perfect sense to me. So please don't correct my interpretations, but definitely offer your own perspective and your own interpretation of the card's wording below. There are going to be a few players out there who see these, read them on the first try, and say, I know exactly what that means, and no other explanation makes sense. And then they are going to meet a player who has also said that, but has arrived to a different conclusion. And that's just kind of HeroQuest in general. So this is really carrying the torch. I will say, if it was Avalon Hill's goal to create a character that gets people talking, that gets people debating and discussing mechanics for better or for worse, they did a bang-up job with this one. Okay, for our playthrough, we are playing the male presenting monk, and the miniature definitely has scars on the chest that didn't show up very well during the presentation video. Sorry about that. He also has multiple scars on his back. Those will definitely show up. So you'll be able to paint him and not have to worry about painting the scars themselves. So it's our first turn, and we are, of course, able to activate an elemental style. And I would say we could activate here, Speak with Stone, and look for secret doors and traps as one action, because there's really nothing else to do. Although we know better, in the trial, there are no secret doors or traps, so nothing happens, and I'll roll for movement after considering this card to be exhausted. At the start of our turn, if there are no monsters in our line of sight, we will recover all exhausted elemental styles, and we will roll for movement 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Our next door appears here, and we know what's in this room by now. This is now the Sargon's turn. I have not opened the door. I was not able to. Something you'll notice also about Ian's beautiful dungeon mats is all of the walls are 1 tile thick, allowing you to place doors in between rooms rather than have the door base encroaching on tiles that are on either side. When counting spaces, I simply skip the door tile. So if the door is here and I'm here and I roll a 2, I will simply go 1, 2, just as you would in a regular game of HeroQuest. So it's Zargon's turn, and Zargon is not able to do anything at this time. So at the beginning of my turn, I simply refresh, speak with stone, recover is the terminology I should use, and choose 1 to activate again. I will activate this time Eye of the Storm. As an action, make 1 unarmed attack against all adjacent enemies. This technique enables you to attack diagonally. Now, something I noticed is that the rule for using elemental styles says once per turn, but it doesn't say when during your turn. So far, I've been activating elemental styles at the beginning of my turn. You don't have to do that. You could do it as soon as you gain a better vantage and see what monsters are in a particular room that you're wanting to explore. You don't have to put all your chips in at the beginning of your turn. I know what's behind this door, so I'm using Eye of the Storm now, but I could just as easily reveal the contents of the room, finish my movement, and then use Eye of the Storm or any of my other elemental styles, so long as I'm not using fire. We'll just put that one up there just to separate it from the rest, give it some visual distinction. All right, so now I'm rolling for movement, and it's a 4. So 1, and we will open the door and reveal the contents within. Within this room are 2 orcs. I've always thought these orcs were well-mannered. They were well-studied. They are in here during their lunch break, trying to work a little bit of alchemy. They are paying attention to the bookshelf and making sure that nothing is out of order. Suddenly, a hero comes in and ruins their study time. Really, that's on the hero. That's my bad. But 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm glad I rolled a 4 to get to this spot. Before they even know what hit them, I am ready to roll an attack, and I'm actually able to attack all adjacent enemies, including diagonal ones, with Eye of the Storm. So the first attack goes through. It is 1 skull, and the orc rolls for defense. And the first orc has not been able to defend at all against this whirlwind attack, Eye of the Storm, and immediately falls, punched straight into the bookshelf in front of which he was standing. The second orc, we're just rolling for defense in advance, evidently. The second orc does defend against this attack appropriately with 1 black shield to the monk's 1 skull. And the monk is barehanded, so is of course only using 2 attack dice. Although the character card does specify 1, we have an asterisk here, and we have the note, when attacking unarmed, roll 1 additional attack die. We are done with our turn. It is now Zargon's turn, and the orc with 3 attack dice is going to counter this vile intrusion, the death of his scholarly friend, with 2 skulls. Almost always do I get 2 skulls to defend against whenever I fight an orc, and the monk does defend with 1. We've lost our first body point of the game. Now, instead of using a character sheet, just for really quick visual reference, I'm just going to use this 10-sided die, and I'm going to put the monk's health at 6, the body points at 6, and then drop them down to 1. They are now at 5. 5 body points for the monk, and now it is Zargon's opportunity to move this orc. I don't see a use in doing so, so I will leave the orc alone, and I will say that it is now the monk's turn. I have 4, technically, abilities to choose from for this turn. I can use Tidal Surge, activate this technique on your turn to split your total movement roll before and after your action, which comes with a little bit of interpretation. We're going to go with whatever is the most fun in a group setting, but I'll just interpret this however, whenever I choose to use it. For now, I think this is more for when your monk is away from monsters, not adjacent to any of them, not under any immediate threat, and has an opportunity to dash up to 1, then use an attack action after activating this card, and then dashing away. Just a regular attack action, not a second elemental style, since we can't do more than 1 elemental style per turn. So this is a pretty good card to have. The other side is Twisting Torrent, activate this technique when you take damage to cancel that damage. There's going to be interpretations as to when this goes into effect, when this card is exhausted, and when you are actually able to activate it. And I think, again, those interpretations are valid. I'm going to make an executive decision that is not related to my power as Zargon at the game table, but is more related to how I actually interpret the rules as intended on this card. Just my interpretation when I use this card. But we also have Speak with Stone. Search for secret doors and traps as one action. This is the first time we have an ability that has those kinds of actions on the card. You would always use this ability outside of combat when you are alone in a room, when there are no other monsters in the room, and that would exhaust this ability. But if you weren't able to use it, that means that you'd have to make sure not to be in the same room with any monsters, because otherwise you would be using your regular secret doors search and traps search actions in normal circumstances, which is when your room is empty. Generally, this also means that there are no monsters in your line of sight. Generally. Sometimes there could be a monster outside in the hallway or something, but usually the case is you've managed to clear out a room and now you're searching for its contents. I'm not telling anybody how to play. I'm just observing what normally happens to me and my players. So I would say that if that happens and the monster's still in your line of sight, you're able to exhaust this card. And then you would be able to continue exhausting cards until you get the touch of Endless Inferno for your fire elemental style, or the Burning Spirit for your fire elemental style. There's just no other way to get to it than to exhaust all of your cards. We flip it over, and then we see the true ability that's supposed to be used whenever you have it in your loadout. That is Strength of Mountain. I think Strength of Mountain is on this card because if you're in a room with enemies, there's no way you're going to use this side when you have this side at your disposal. So I think this was a really good choice to combine these two. They could have just as easily called this Blazing Fist and put it under the fire elemental styles. They could have called it Ice Arm or something, indicating an icy-like block over the fist. Put it with the water elemental styles. There are all kinds of ways they could have done it. They put it on the green card because you're meant to use this one in between battles, and you're meant to use this one in battle. That's my interpretation anyway. And I think as far as getting your fire abilities, I think it is next to impossible to charge up this ability in advance in between battles. You'd have to really make sure you're always positioning your monk such that there are always monsters in your line of sight so you don't recover your elemental styles in order to be able to save up your fire attacks for rooms that are full of monsters or full of big bads or whatever the case may be to use it most effectively. This definitely presents some challenges to metagamers, and it's probably going to cause some debates between rules lawyers because of the interpretations. But again, not something we're going to worry about other than discussing it here, just commenting on it. In any case, I'm going to use Strength of Mountain. I think Avalon Hill have definitely given us a great loadout when we are in the middle of a room full of monsters and we have lots of battle options. We have an attack that allows us to go up to a monster and strike. We have an attack that allows us to go up to a monster, strike, and then back away. And we have another one that allows us to go into a crowd of monsters and strike all of them that we can reach. We are attacking this orc with Strength of Mountain, rolling an additional 2 attack dice on an unarmed attack. And that is 1 skull, because why would I expect any less? And I will say Strength of Mountain only works if it's an unarmed attack. So this one's going to be really difficult to use if you are trying to build your monk out with weapons, because the other side, again, is one that is usually only used when you have no monsters to fight. The orc, I noticed that I just rolled the dice that I assigned to the monster, but I'm going to count it as the monk's dice. So we're not going to worry about that for this turn. The orc is going to roll for defense and doesn't roll any defense and gets blown away by that strike, meaning there are no enemies left in this room. Now, we can continue our adventure. It is Zargon's turn. Zargon has no monsters to move on the board, so we are moving our monk into the next room. We know that there's a Famir and a goblin here, but we're going to go ahead and reveal the contents, place them down, and see how we can position ourselves to fight in this room. Why did I say Famir? I'm always doing it. I know very well, just as much as you do, that there is an abomination in this room. I guess honestly, you can tell which version of this quest I have played the most of. So, we need a goblin, and now we are ready to finish our movement. I think I'll go ahead this time and activate Title Surge. I think there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to activate Title Surge. Activate this technique on your turn, doesn't say when, to split your total movement roll before and after your action. And that's going to be up to me and my interpretation for this time. I hope you're not putting $1 in a bucket or taking a shot every time I say interpretation. I really do apologize for the over-explanations in this video. But that's going to be a 9. I'm just going to say 2, 3... and I will attack this goblin. Going to do a regular unarmed attack on the goblin. I got a skull. Did the goblin defend against my skull? Goblin has 1 defense dice. No, the goblin did not defend. Use the wrong color again. Goblin dies. And I'm just going to move back out of the room, and I'm going to stay right here. I ran in there and sniped the goblin. The abomination has no idea what just happened. They saw their friend murdered and the assailant run back out the door. It's Zargon's turn. Zargon moves this abomination to the edge, and fittingly, using the Spirit Queen's Torment dice, rolls an attack and gets 2 skulls. My monk has a very generous 3 defense naturally, and has rolled 1 white shield. So that brings his health down by 1. So far, the monk is actually doing really well for being a lone hero during the trial. It is the monk's turn, and I have used all 3 of these techniques. At some point, though, when I defeated the second orc and came into this room, I had monsters in my line of sight. So while I did have a point during the game where I had no monsters in my line of sight, the cards don't refresh until the beginning of your turn, and so far there has not been a beginning of turn where there were monsters outside of my line of sight. So the way to use these is, if you're going to activate one and try to get fire, go ahead and run into the next room. And now we are able to use fire. We can use the elemental style of fire. This is exciting. We can use Burning Spirit, which expels a beam of energy from my soul's core and takes out every monster in front of me or diagonally for 2 damage, or we can use Touch of Endless Inferno and inflict 1 body point of damage now, and the target will take an additional 2 body points at the end of its next turn. So this is really situational. It's either clear a room of several monsters or fight the big bad. Well, this is a big bad situation, but the Burning Spirit is going to do more damage to him and take him out immediately. So we're going to use Burning Spirit, and we've taken out the Famir without having to roll a single die. That was Zargon's turn. Zargon could have just as easily moved the abomination to another room, and all of the monsters would have been out of the monk's line of sight, which would have recovered the styles, which would have made it impossible to use the fire elemental style during that turn, unless you rule that these simply have to be exhausted once each before you can use this. Sort of like charging them up, building up a sort of bank of exhausted cards before being able to use this, rather than having all 3 of them tapped before you use this. And no, tapped is not HeroQuest terminology. This is just the common term for when I have to take a card and move it sideways. I'm sure if you know, you know. But I don't know that I would rule it that way. I think I would more challenge the monk to try to have all of these exhausted and not have a break in the action before they're able to use the fire techniques, simply because doing it any other way to me would make the monk extremely powerful, able to use a fire technique every 4th turn, so long as they were engaging with the enemies. And no reason not to when you're in a party of heroes, but it would mean just a lot of damage output by the monk every single game. We have no monsters in our line of sight now, and we are able to recover all of our techniques. I'm feeling good about this. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. As we all know, the Dread Warrior room is here. Sometimes it's a Chaos Warrior room, and sometimes it's a Chaos Warrior and Famir room, depending on the edition of HeroQuest. But for me, I am going to go in this room and tromp these 2 Dread Warriors. I'm not afraid of them this time. Famous last words. No, this time, we are going to get justice for all the times I sent heroes into this room to be slaughtered by these Dread Warriors during playtests. And perhaps my hubris will only prove that it happens yet again with the monk, but I'm not going to be afraid. It's Zargon's turn. These monsters aren't technically on the board yet. I've just pre-placed them. Zargon can't do anything. We are moving again. 6. And we have to figure out which of these we want to activate. But 1, 2, 3, and then 4, and then 5. That would actually put me in a line of sight actually, it would make me in melee range for both of these Dread Warriors. I don't want to do that. So if we go here, we can use our diagonal attack by activating Eye of the Storm, because Soaring Dragon is useless at this juncture. We don't want to use Soaring Dragon. Automatically succeed when jumping over attack. I don't need that one. But I'm still going to be ending my turn after using that action here. So I really don't have any choice but to run away, which is not a very heroic thing to do. I'll stand right at the doorway. We will be engaging with some minor doorway combat. The monsters now move on Zargon's turn. The first Dread Warrior is coming up to the door and is attacking with, of course, 4 attack dice. And out of all the attack dice rolled, they are all fails. Every single one of them is a shield of some kind. That is brilliant. We are going to use one of our techniques now. We're going to use Strength of Mountain. Roll 2 additional attack dice on an unarmed attack. This is what we're going to use, and it will be exhausted. We're not going to... I think we will move away, actually. I think we will move away after we use this technique. We have rolled all shields. It is almost as if the HeroQuest karma gods said, haha, that's what you get for boasting after the Dread Warrior took his turn. If I don't move, both Dread Warriors will be able to attack my monk. The first one will attack, then move. The second one will move and then attack. I don't want that, so I am going to move. It's a 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, Zargon can play this any way he wants, but for the sake of playing aggressively, or if we're using a solo play system, generally that will have instructions for the monster to move in and attack. So the Dread Warriors can move 7 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is optimal, I think. And I'm going to now use... That's tough. These other two actions just became really difficult. We'll go ahead and activate Twisting Torrent because we need to have some interpretation of this used. Activate this technique when you take damage to cancel that damage. So this is something that could happen during the hero's turn if they are searching for traps. Twisting Torrent could be used, and then the trap is just going to be completely mitigated by this hero. There would be no reason to fear any trap if you are the monk with this, as long as you can continuously keep it recovered. So we'll use it, even though this isn't a trap context. It doesn't say when you take damage from a trap, it just says when you take damage. So we'll use it, and then we are going to attack the Dread Warrior, because this is not an action. This is using an elemental style. We have 1 skull. Will the Dread Warrior defend against it? No, the Dread Warrior will not defend against it. A lot of folks like to use the skull tokens in their game of HeroQuest. I like to be a bit more blasphemous. I like to use dice and other record-keeping methods instead of putting skulls down under the miniatures or on character sheets or cards or anything like that. So this Chaos Warrior has 3 body points left. It's the Sword Chaos Warrior. It's time for my monk to move. Move it, and that's going to be a 4. So really just need to move 1 space because don't have any reason to run away from these guys any more than I already have. I just need to ensure that one doesn't get a strike in and then is able to move away. That is a little bit of metagaming, but it's not really meta. It's one of the game's mechanics. It's something you're able to do every game, every time, any hero. It's Zargon's turn. The Dread Warrior moves in and attacks. First time I've really drawn this battle out to have them come out like this. That's 2 skulls. Will I be able to mitigate them? I can mitigate 1 of them. I have 1 defend die that I've rolled. This brings my total health down to 3. And now I've got Eye of the Storm. As an action, make 1 unarmed attack against all adjacent enemies. So I will go ahead and do that here. You'll notice I didn't move the second Dread Warrior up 1 space, because if I'd had this configuration going on, Zargon could have been attacked by this Eye of the Storm technique, and both of the Dread Warriors would have been at risk. We are going to go ahead and make an unarmed attack, so that's against all adjacent enemies, but it doesn't say that I can't use it against just one. That's one skull, which means this has now been used, and our Dread Warrior does not block it, which brings his health down again. This time he's got 1 health left. I put the die that said 3. I forgot to actually deduct 1, so he had 2. Now he's got 1. This monk has actually been hitting the Dread Warrior in all of the spots. Man, he's actually been striking in places. We're just going to move 1 space away, keeping the Dread Warrior in my line of sight. And now, I should be able to use Burning Spirit on my next turn. Well, Zargon is going to be smarter than that. Rather than give us the fanfare, we need some fanfare for Zargons as well. This Dread Warrior is going to move completely out of the monk's line of sight. And now it's the beginning of the monk's turn. And I think, while I know that there's some interpretations as to whether this is out of line of sight or this is out of line of sight for some Zargons, I think this one's much more assured, and so that's why I'm stopping here. All right, so all of my actions get recovered. I hope it was worth it, Zargon, because I'm about to wreck you. We're going to go ahead and move up and roll our movement dice. This time, we've rolled an 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to attack both of these with Eye of the Storm. It's not a very strong attack, but it's something. This first one gets a skull worth of damage, and I keep rolling off camera. I should have gotten my dice tray. Unless he can roll for defense, which he does not. That's a perfect hero defense. Not so much a perfect villain defense. He's taken his first body point of damage, and now I roll against the second Dread Warrior, who also might take a skull of damage. He might die outright. He does not, though. He rolls a really, really good monster defense of 3. The monk has placed himself in a terrible, terrible position. The Dread Warriors are now both able to act. It's the beginning of Zargon's turn. They both have 4 attack dice, and this isn't going to look very pretty for our monk. So the first one's going to attack from here, and that is a total of 3 skulls. Will our monk be able to mitigate this damage? The monk could actually die in a single hit. Yes. No. 3 skulls is what the monk has rolled, and this Chaos Warrior has taken the monk out by removing his last 3 body points. Ladies and gentlemen, and NBs alike, we have test played our monk. We've gone over some test cases, some use cases, some edge cases. We've had some interpretations of the abilities. We've used the abilities. We've strategized. We've thought about how to go about charging up our fire elemental styles. We've drawn Dread Warriors out. This hero is not meant to be played in a solo fashion. This hero is meant to be a high output damage dealer early game who is able to be supplemented by just some things in the game and is able to earn gold on behalf of any other given hero in an arbitrary manner, and then perhaps give excess gold to other heroes that might need it more. This hero is able to really well supplement a party, especially the classic configuration party that may include someone who has some healing ability and someone who's able to tank and take attention from Zargon's stronger monsters. I think that the monk is going to work really well in my gameplays, although I obviously threw him into danger and tried to take some risks in order to showcase the abilities. As always, the room with the Dread Warriors was my downfall. But in a game of 4 heroes, that's much less likely to be the case. And that might be obvious, but I just wanted to state it. So anyway, that is the playtest for the monk. Thank you very much for watching. Please let me know if you'd like to see other content just like this. I would love to get back into playing some solo HeroQuest. I definitely have a lot more to do, especially since I skipped the playtest for the Rogue. I think I did anyway, so I'll have to get back into that and playtest the Rogue as well. As always, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, bye for now.